everyone, welcome back to a new episode of Match Points with RSPA, where we discuss coaching education, leadership, and all things racket sports. I'm Ramona Husaru, and today I have the absolute pleasure to be having a special guest, Dr. Jack Groppel.
Thank you, Ramona. It's great to be with you.
Jack, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know we've been planning this for quite some time, so I'm excited to have you here.
We have it. It's great to be at the headquarters. You know, this is my first trip, so it's great.
We would love to spend some time with you today. I've been fortunate enough to know you for many years. A lot of our audience, coaches in the audience have known you for many years as well. And your career is just absolutely remarkable.
Thank you.
As a performance psychology major myself, I've been a huge fan with all the work that you've been doing, and I can tell you firsthand that your work has laid a strong foundation for my professional development as well.
Thank you.
So I'm really excited for this conversation today to kind of go through your journey and to help our coaches learn from your work and help them become a little bit more confident, better understand the high performance principles and how to become a high performer themselves.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it.
Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great. Let's go.
Wonderful. As I said, your career is absolutely remarkable with all the accomplishments and all the work that you've done, a pioneer in the human performance space.
Thank you.
So rather than me outlining all the accomplishments and kind of walking through that, I would love if you could walk us through your journey and tell us how you got started and then how your career advanced to some of the amazing things you've done.
Well, thank you. I think what a lot of the people watching probably know how I got into it. It was totally by accident that I got into the field. My undergraduate degree was actually in wildlife biology, and but once I got into kinesiology, my kinesiology professor, his name was Charles Dillman, and I had no idea how blessed I was to have him as my teacher, and he became my master's thesis advisor. But he said 17 words to me, and I think for the coaches watching us, never underestimate the words that come out of your mouth when you say them to a student. He said, if you really apply yourself, you could one day become a pioneering leader in the science of tennis performance. And he said that.
Oh.
And that was all it took. And I created my own career. Honestly, I really did. That was the stimulus for me to take the bull by the horns and really study the game. And then Chuck, just so everybody understands this, Chuck Dillman, he became the director of sports science, of all of sports science for the U.S. Olympic Training Center. So Chuck, even though his doctorate was in biomechanics, he was very multidimensional. He looked at the whole human being. So he was my master's thesis advisor. Then I went to Florida State to study with Dr. Terry Ward, but Terry, even though he was really a great professor, he didn't have doctoral dissertation status. He was fairly young. So the director of my doctoral dissertation was Dr. Robert Singer. Well, Bob was going to become the president of the International Society of Sports Psychology. So he's directing, so even though my doctorate is in exercise physiology and bioengineering, I was molded in a very multidimensional way that the whole human being had to be understood, not just the physical component that I was getting my specialty in.
Interesting, and I think that's something that you obviously were exposed to early on, back when you were doing your doctorate. I mean, you were one of the very first to even study anything in this space.
Yeah, there were a handful of sports scientists in the United States, and there were a handful globally, but you know, we started learning a lot from the former Soviet Union and the Eastern German, you know, the Eastern European countries. They were doing a lot. Some things illegal, by the way, I mean, with steroids usage and ergogenic aids, but they were very, very scientific in their application. So we learned very, very quickly what was happening. And then, for example, Bob Singer and I, when I was doing my doctoral work, we drove up to the 1976 Olympic Scientific Congress, and I unwittingly submitted 2 papers that got accepted. So here I am, I'm this doctoral student, not even a candidate yet, and I'm presenting at the Olympic Scientific Congress 2 papers, one on tennis, one on Olympic weightlifting, and then I go to the Olympic Games, and who knew, but I'm in the forum when Nadia Comaneci scored her first perfect 10. I'm on the finish line when Bruce Jenner won the decathlon. Queen Elizabeth was like 100 yards down to my left. I mean, it was unconscionable for this young kid in my 20s to be exposed to this and to be traveling with Bob Singer, who knew. I mean, one night we had all the Soviet scientists in one hotel room, and all they're doing, we have translators, and all we're doing is talking about science. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Somebody pinch me! And this is how I was exposed to this whole thing. And so this is up until '76.
Amazing. Amazing. So I know you played college tennis.
I did.
Also. How did you eventually navigate into the next roles that you've had with some of the amazing things you've done in the biomechanics space, and then eventually opening your own company, co-founding the Human Performance Institute?
Well, when I was a doctoral student, I was starting to do a lot of high-speed film work with tennis, and my master's thesis was on spin technique. So you asked, so I'm going to take you down this road with me. So I wrote a letter to a man by the name of Robert Kardashian. He's since passed. He was the head of a magazine called Eastern Tennis Magazine. I have no idea how we got connected, but I wrote to him and I told him what I was doing. And that was the first article I ever wrote for a magazine. And then I started building my brand, and people started understanding who I was and what I was doing. And I went to the USTA conference, and I met this guy by the name of Jim Lair at the National Tennis Teachers Conference. And Jim and I connected, and everybody knows the story. You know, we stayed in touch, and then in the 80s, Jim was the founding chair of the sports science program, and I was the founding chairman. He was the founding director, and I was the founding chairman of the sports science committee. So we're continuing to work together. Now we're traveling all over the world because the USTA is sending us as the two sports scientists to work with coaching education in other countries and with the ITF. And it literally just started snowballing, that we just started traveling more, and I started traveling more, and then I was doing things individually, and I just kept doing research. The fascinating part is that I was on the tenure. After I finished coaching, you know, you said I played at the University of Illinois, then I coached there for 4 years, but I started working with players on the tour, and I wasn't able to give the energy to the college students, so I resigned. But then I was on tenure track, Ramona. So now I've got to publish or perish. Now I'm publishing scientific articles about tennis, and some of them very theoretical, derivation of equations of motion to predict spin on a tennis. I mean, it was just crazy what I was doing. And I was getting funding by doctors to look at tennis elbow and high-speed film. Then I started looking at string tension. And then Nike flew me out to work with McEnroe one year with shoe design. And that got started. That was the beginning of him actually designing the three-quarter top shoe that he did. So everything started happening, but it all happened because I started doing really quality research, asking significant questions that we couldn't understand. In the early 80s, I was at my home in Champaign, Illinois, and I saw a very famous professional tennis player, I will not say the name, give a tip, and the player said, to hit topspin, you roll over the ball. And I'm going, no. Now, I'd just been studying this for years, and I'm going, this is on national television during the US Open. So what do? I get stop action from the high-speed film I've taken. I sent it to World Tennis Magazine, and I said, we owe it to the players, we owe it to them to teach the game the right way. So then they invited me to write an article. Then I became a contributing editor for World Tennis for about 5 years, and then for 12 years, I think 12 years or 15, I became an instruction editor for Tennis Magazine. But it all started because I pushed the envelope to teach the game the right way.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's, you bring up such an important part about teaching or doing things the right way, and that obviously shows a lot of curiosity on your end and a lot of drive to want to do things the right way. And one thing that I've always admired about your work and Dr. Lear's work as well is that you took the theoretical concepts and made them very applicable and translatable into what the coaches need to know. And I know you've done this with all your biomechanical work and all the research that you've done, and along with all the other things that you guys have done at the HPI. And I think that at the end of the day, that's what the coaches need to know, is how to apply these principles in a way that it impacts their players.
Yeah, I would invite the coaches to have that childlike curiosity, because I believe, even at my age right now, I still have a childlike curiosity. I still have a curiosity about how things work, how things happen, why, how does the brain work? I mean, I still have this childlike curiosity, and I would encourage them, never think that you know everything, because as soon as you do, you no longer do. As soon as you think you got it, you no longer do. It's like as soon as you think you're a great tennis player, somebody's going to come along and knock you off your pedestal, or in any of the racket sports. So the idea is that always maintain a curiosity, and then study it, understand it. So whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual, whatever it is about human performance, understand it. Do your best to be curious about how you could be better at understanding it.
Yeah, and I think one of the other important segments that you mentioned is, from your example specifically, early on, you were curious to know how the whole, like understanding the whole human and understanding all the parts, where if you just know the physical aspect or the technical aspect, but you don't fully understand the whole human being, it's a little bit harder to translate that knowledge to your students, right? So I'm happy to hear that you're encouraging our coaches to keep that holistic mindset in mind.
Well, and just a lot of the coaches don't know what I'm going to tell you right now, but there's a few people that do know what I'm going to tell you right now, not many. But when I started understanding all this, I realized there was an aspect of the physical that I didn't understand as well as I could, even though my doctorate was in exercise physiology, and that was nutrition. So what did I do? I took courses and I got certified. I became a licensed nutritionist, but I went back to take courses to understand it the right way so that I could help coaches and athletes in that realm, because without understanding nutrition, I couldn't help them recover. So just to sort of dovetail onto that, I saw like a little bit of a nick in something that I needed to fill that. I needed to fill that void. How can I understand this better?
Amazing. Again, you've been a source of inspiration for many of us, so I do hope that the coaches watching at home do become familiar with your work and also adopt that same mindset, that same drive for striving for excellence and to really understanding the game and the game as a whole to be able to help themselves, but also their players in the best possible way. So let's take a step back and talk about high performance, or what does it take to be a high performer? Okay. I know a lot of the coaches in the audience probably thinking, well, high performance is not really for me. You know, I'm teaching maybe just 10 and under tennis, or I'm working at a club and I'm only working with, recreational players that only want to play for fun. What does high performance actually mean, and what does it take to be a high performer?
You're going to really laugh at what I'm going to say right now. I don't know what high performance is. The way we live it. I don't know. I don't know what we're meaning by that. I think we really have to, I'm all about defining our terms.
Okay.
So what is high performance? So if it's dealing with a player, for example, if they're not in the top 500 in the world, does that mean they're not a high performance player? I think they're a pretty good player. I mean, but does that mean they're not high performance? Do they have to be, do they have to win the US Open? At what level are they considered a high performance player? A high performance coach? At what level are you considered a high performance? See, so when you ask me I'm going, we've got to define this. So now let me define it. I think a high performance coach is one who can adapt her or his style of teaching to the needs of the student. So I volunteer to work a 3.5 ladies league team at my community that I live with in Florida. And it's just so amazing to see these ladies who all they see is exactly what all of our students see. They watch television and they watch the pros play and they see this incredible racket head speed, and they hear that Arina Sabalenka can hit the ball harder than many of the men, and they're going, oh yeah. So what do they think? I've got to swing really, really hard. Mechanically, they break down. You should see the look on their, just this past week I was on the court with them, and one of the ladies started realizing that if she was moving the correct way and she slowed her swing down and used her body correctly, she was teeing off on the ball. She was hitting such a heavy ball, and her eyes got like this. She goes, but I'm not swinging hard. And I'm going, exactly. You're using your body correctly. And for me, we as coaches have to be able, first of all, we as coaches have to understand everything. That's on us to understand the physical, all the physical components, all the mental, all the emotional, all the spiritual. Why are our players coming to us in any racket sport? Why are they coming to us? How can we meet their needs? We all know. Name the last 5 Nobel Peace Prize winners and the Nobel Prize winners in physics. You can't do it. But name 5 people that influenced your life, and very often those are coaches.
That's right.
But those coaches cared about the students. That's the key. And so we talk about high performance coach, you are a coach who can adapt that you've learned to the needs of this particular student. Then you help her or him excel, whatever excel looks like. If they're only a 3.0 player, make them a good 3.0 player.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'll laugh at the ladies that I work with, and I'll say, if you fall down, I want you to still get the racket on the ball. And they laugh at me because they're going, I just want to get up. And I'm going, no, if the ball's coming and you fall, I want you to see where just make sure the racket. So I'm teaching them contact, but we laugh about it.
Right.
Have a good contact point. So that's my challenge. So as a high performance coach, you need to know everything, but it's how you adapt to the needs of your student that will make you high performance.
That's an absolute, I think, gem right there, because I think a lot of the coaches focus so much on, having a good foundation, but a lot of them have the tendency to, and I've been guilty of this when I first started coaching as well, is that you tend to teach or coach the way you were taught. And it's almost like you only know one way and you try to implement that with your students. Mm-hmm. But the more experience you get, the more you realize that you have to adapt to the player that's in front of you, and you have to adapt to their learning style and their personalities and really make it all about them. So I think the fact that you're bringing up that point of adaptability front and center as one of the key components of high performance, I think it's absolutely something that coaches definitely need to keep in mind.
For me, it's critically important, and that requires flexibility, vulnerability. You got to realize that maybe you don't know everything.
Yeah. There's more than one way of coaching.
There's more than one way.
Teaching.
For example, a student, it could be auditory, visual, they could be kinesthetic. We all understand that. So does your teaching style, can you adapt to all three of those learning styles? If you can't, learn to do it. It's like when I was younger and I realized I needed to understand nutrition better. Okay, I went back to school. I got certified. I got licensed so that I could understand it. And I think that's my challenge is if you fill out the checklist, where do you need to get better?
Right.
As a performance coach.
Yeah, and I think you're also bringing up another important point about if you want to be able to teach players a holistic game and help them develop holistically in a well-rounded player, you have to have well-rounded knowledge for yourself to be able to teach them that way, right?
Yeah, and then the other thing is, and I think this is key too, we often talk and tell because we're so knowledgeable. When in fact, if we listen, we could probably help them a lot more, because we don't really know their pain points, the students' pain points. Whether it's juniors, if a child is being dropped off by a parent and doesn't want to be with us, maybe your tennis lesson that day is just helping the child cope with being somewhere the child doesn't want to be. It's just really interesting when you start thinking about it. And then if you're working with adults like I am, to hear them talk about the fact that they've got to swing hard, or they'll say, I need to start winning. And I'll go, no, you don't need to start winning. You want to start winning. And I explained to them, 50% of the players that played today lost. And so you're not going to win all the time. So how do you understand how to win with grace and lose with honor? See, I think that's something we need to teach as coaches as well. Win with grace. Don't be braggart. Win with grace, but then lose with honor. Because if you lose a match, you haven't lost any identification or your ego. But it happens. Like
and you
when
learn.
They say, I need to win. No, you don't need to win. You want to win.
That's right.
So it's helping them and listening. So we all had our grandparents tell us we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That's why we should listen better, But we're never taught how to listen. I mean, think about it in school: reading, writing, arithmetic, spelling, everything. But we're never taught to listen. But if we as coaches can learn to listen better, we can be better as a performing coach.
That's right. That's right. Well, really well said. So what I've heard so far is number 1, adaptability.
Right.
Number 2, active listening, making
Yes.
sure that we're attuned with the students.
Absolutely.
Number 3, a little bit of vulnerability.
Vulnerability, I think, is key, and that's hard.
To acknowledge that maybe you don't know it all and that you're open to learning, so that growth mindset comes in. What are some other key components that can make coaches be high performance or high performer?
Well, I would step back and say, what are the things that are preventing my student from being better? What's preventing my student from being better? I mean, is it strokes? Is it movement? Is it how they handle pressure? Is it their fitness? What is it? that's keeping them? What's preventing them? I used to call this the limiting factors of tennis. And we as coaches, if we had a checklist for ourselves, we just talked about that, let's have a checklist for our students. What's preventing you from being a better player at the level that you are? And very often has nothing to do with the game. Very often their brains are so cluttered that we as coaches can help them settle everything down. I mean, again, the ladies that I work with, 3.5 ladies, I mean, I'll be hitting volleys with them and I'll hit a ball a little bit away from them and you can see their eyes and they're, and you're going, and I'll literally say, don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. And they start slowing down and they start getting set and then they start hitting a good ball and it's like, oh, and then they look at you, oh my, this is really working.
So really helping players do better under pressure.
Yeah.
Right? Putting them in those situations
right.
so they can be more comfortable when the pressure does come on, right?
Yeah.
And that brings calmness. Like you said, the more you're in a situation multiple times, the better you're going to handle it when you're actually during the match.
Yeah. You know, a lot of players, a lot of coaches have said this, so I don't take credit for it, but tennis is a game of emergencies.
Right.
And
problem solving.
So, and as I love to say to my ladies, your job is to create a bigger emergency for your opponent than your opponent creates for you. But to this point now, if you see, everybody thinks they've got to be on the offense. No, can you get on defense and can you play well? Then do you know how to structure a point that you can get back on offense? I mean, this is like mind-blowing for some players. Wait, you mean after I hit that defensive lob, I might be able to get back in the point? Yeah. Can you take control of the point? I mean, this is another level of players understanding themselves as competitors and getting better.
Yeah, so that tennis IQ or the sport that they're playing, the IQ that they need on the court to recognize what they're doing on their side of the court, but also what's happening on the other side of the court.
You know, and that brings up another thing that I've always laughed at, the word anticipation. I think it's fascinating, the word anticipation, like knowing what's going to happen before it happens. Well, think about, let's use tennis as an example. I'll never forget this, it happened at Wimbledon one year. McEnroe hit a ball, and I think he was playing Connors. So it was a long time ago, but it was such an important picture for me, a word picture. McEnroe chipped a ball, and Connors went to the two-handed backhand side, and he was low down here. Now what's he going to hit with that? He's either going to go deep up the line or probably an angled drop volley. McEnroe, and they did it in slow motion, and all they're doing is screaming about his anticipation. What he did, he limited the possibilities of the return. He hit such a shot that there wasn't a whole lot that the player could do with that ball. So when you're able to do that, yeah, it looks like you've got great anticipation, but what you really did was you set up the point for yourself. Yeah. You set yourself up. And when players start learning this, we as coaches feel a huge reward because the player, they will never leave you if they start learning this kind of stuff.
And I think the more we're talking about it, the more we're describing that holistic approach that you've been mentioning, that
right.
The physical aspect is important, understanding the physicality and also some of the biomechanics principles that can help players execute their shots better. Then there's the technical aspect that needs to be owned. Then there's the tactical aspect
for sure.
that needs to be understood so they can set up their patterns and have that tennis IQ so they can win matches. And then there's also the mental component that you mentioned, is exposing them to competition, exposing them to pressure so they can better compete when they're playing matches, right? So that holistic, you're already describing that holistic approach.
It's physical, it's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual. I mean, there's this component. It's to every human being, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And we as coaches have to understand that.
So walk us through a little bit more. We mentioned the mental, where players need to be in high pressure situations, and for coaches themselves also, when, for example, if you're overseeing a team or if you're conducting a major project at your club, you are performing under pressure, right? So the more you're exposed to those situations, the better you'll do.
Correct.
Walk us through the other aspects that you mentioned, the spiritual and the emotional. What do coaches need to understand for themselves to perform better, and how can that relate to their players as well?
Well, emotionally, let's talk about the word stress. Stress has gotten a bad rap. You know, as a physiologist, let's understand, stress is only the stimulus for growth. You know, people abhor stress, they hate stress. But the problem is, if I took stress out of your life, you would die. We're a biological organism, so we have to have stress. That keeps us thriving. So it's doses of stress though, followed by doses of recovery. What we know is that stress is the stimulus for growth. Recovery is when growth occurs. If there is no recovery, there is no growth. So our culture just goes. We end up like the rock going across the pond, skimming across the surface of life, and we can't go deep. We'll talk about the deep when we go to the spiritual. But so emotionally, we as coaches, we create those doses of stress and then help them with coping mechanisms like I'm doing with the ladies. Don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. And suddenly the clutter is gone and now they're in control and now they hit a great ball and they think you're the best thing since sliced bread because what you just taught them. Now, if we go to the spiritual, human beings are mission specific as a species. We want to have meaning in our lives. So to help them understand, why are they coming to you? Because why aren't they staying home on the couch playing video games? And again, I've said this before in our webinars, that whether you like it or not, the video game industry has been brilliant in how they've marketed and how they've created stimulation to the brain. So we have to do a better job at get the fun aspect and get them stimulated to come to us, having fun, being connected to other people and making it enjoyable. But if we can do that, but to the spiritual piece is, why are we here? Why are we doing this? What matters most? Ask the question, what matters most to you? The player who said, I need to win. I said, no, you don't need to win. You want to win. And then she understood what I meant. Because if you lose, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. It's not just the fact that you lost a tennis match or a pickleball match, the sun's still going to come up tomorrow.
Right.
You know, so the idea that you need versus wants is interesting. But if you can get your wants to become your needs, now you've really gotten somewhere.
You're talking about helping players and also coaches for themselves identify a bigger purpose, right?
By far. We search
bigger
for
reason,
meaning.
a bigger reason for why do they do what they do every day?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly believe that a coach changes people's lives every day. I think the coaching profession is one of the most honorable professions in the world, and we have a privilege to influence people's lives every day. So we're not just walking on the court, we're actually influencing people's lives. Yeah, we might be teaching a forehand today, or a serve, or a lob, or an overhead, but how do we cope with that? How are they learning? What is this doing to influence them? Because we all know that when they leave us, we want them to feel better about themselves, because they'll keep coming back. If they feel better about themselves, they'll never leave you. They'll want to, and if you go to another club or something, they'll follow you. This is how, and we've all seen this happen, because they really like pro X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to follow pro X, Y, and Z because that pro really cared for me.
You bring up a very unique perspective in terms of creating that authenticity through their teaching.
That's right.
Right, and really being able to connect with the players in a unique way, so that the players actually choose you as a coach, where they would have multiple options to go somewhere else, but they choose your program because you made them feel special and you cared about them, and you were able to tailor your instruction accordingly. And you also brought up the fun, which is one of the most important aspects in retaining players. How can coaches continue to offer that fun element into their programs to keep the players engaged?
I think the first is that fun is defined differently at different stages in life. So for young children, all that matters is fun. For teens, it's fun and their peers, acceptance. So we as coaches have to understand who our audience is. Young adults and middle adults, unfortunately, career starts to play a big role. Family starts to play a big role. Fun, yeah, but not as much as, it's unfortunate, but fun still plays a role. Escape almost plays a role from their day-to-day life. So are we doing a good job, or do they feel more stressed by coming to us? And later on, seniors, I mean, it's spiritual. Spiritual, I mean, obviously you're in the last quarter maybe of your life, and your meaning becomes more, are we as coaches helping them enjoy what they're experiencing with us? Or are we driving them into the ground and they're going, I don't like this. I actually had a woman do this to me once. We were playing a little mixed doubles, and I was just messing around, but I was just hitting a touch, but I hit 3 touch balls and I hit them for winners. I didn't really mean to, but she literally walks up to the net and she slaps the net. She goes, "Jack, I am not having fun right now." I went, "Well, we're going to change that then." But I appreciated that she felt comfortable to say that to me.
Exactly.
This is not fun right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm just hitting these winners, even though I was just barely touching the ball.
Yeah.
She couldn't get to it. So now, okay, I'll play a little bit more customer tennis and we'll have a little bit more fun.
Right. Yeah, and I think it reminds me of some of the things that you said a while back when we did an interview with you, where you talked about fun, how fun sometimes, can be the usual fun that we are all familiar with, but fun can also be a mindset and learning how to enjoy something that's a little bit challenging and overcoming challenges, enjoying the battle of a tennis match, having fun in problem solving or overcoming a situation like you just mentioned. So fun can be tweaked in many different ways.
Oh, that's so important, because fun isn't just laughing all the time. Fun involves joy, contentedness. I mean, you can work hard and have fun. So it's not about, fun isn't just laughing and joking around. Fun is having joy in what you're doing and being content. So are we as coaches helping our players with contentedness? Are they in a joyful place? Are they feeling good, about what we're doing? And that's a really big deal. It's not just the laughter.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we think it's just giggles and, as we all say, the hick and giggles, with customer tennis. Yeah, that's good, that's fun, but even when things are tough, can we create an environment where even if they lost, did they have fun? That's a hard one.
Yeah.
But you see, that's an acceptance that, and the greatest players in the world, I love doing this with my 3.5 ladies, Why is it that a great player at 4-all in the third can hit a screaming backhand down the line for a winner? They're not afraid to lose. Mm-hmm. And everybody says, well, they've made so much money. Yeah, but at one point they weren't making that much money. How did they learn to hit that ball? Because they had to get to a point where they accepted, I might lose, but I'm going to hit this thing, and I'm going to hit it well.
Exactly.
And some players, I've worked with players on the tour that they got drummed, they got beat 2-2. And you walk off the court and you don't know how to handle it, and you're going, so how are you feeling about the match? And they'll literally say, I've seen this happen. I played great today, I was only missing by this much. And you're going, in your brain, you're going, dude, you got drummed today. You got handled, but they're going, I played so well. See, they were joyful because they played well. I love it.
I love it all. So I want to take a step back and go revisit what you just said about stress and how us as coaches, it's important for us to be able to handle stress. It's the same thing with our players. We want to be able to help them manage stress as well. But you also brought up an important part, which is the recovery part of it, right? Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit more about recovery and why is that important to build that strength.
It was fascinating. I was just talking to a coach just this past weekend. I was at a match, a league match, and I was talking to a coach, well-known coach. I'm not going to mention names, I don't have permission, but he's in his 40s, and I asked him, how many hours are you on the court every day? He says, between 6 and 7. I said, how long are you planning on doing this? You're in your 40s right now, and are you looking at this in your 60s? I said, because it's not going to be that easy to be 7 hours on a tennis court, banging balls. And I said, are you having fun? He says, I am really having fun. I really am. And I was there, and all the members are coming up to him, and they appreciated him so much, and he's got a great personality. But he also has a young family, and when he leaves the tennis court, he leaves the tennis court. This is a problem that I had when I was a young career professional. I was so married to my career that it was hard for me to ever get away from work. And I own that. I'll look in the camera and I'll say, I own that. My memoir's coming out this fall, in fact, and I tell the whole story.
I'm so excited about.
I tell the whole story, everything. So my counsel is to build in mechanisms of recovery that when you're away from work, you are away from work. You're not, and I know it's, this isn't just banging balls. It's allow yourself time to be with friends, family, connect outside of your work, find joy, have a hobby other than tennis. See, for me, tennis was my hobby and my job and my life, and I'm blessed. I have no regrets on that part. I do have regrets on the personal side because I didn't really live as I was teaching.
Well, I think you bring up a very common struggle that a lot of driven professionals have,
I think
right?
so too.
We are very driven to reach certain milestones, or we're used to winning matches and pursuing
right.
the next thing and the next thing. And if we don't have that recovery that you're talking about, or that balance with, continuing to push, but also allowing us to actually have that balance, we're going to get burned out at some point.
So what does recovery look like? That's the issue. So your work, now recovery is something other than what you're doing for work. Now you could change tasks. You could, for example, for some people, if you're a director, for example, maybe you're on the court and then you are working on a project. You mentioned that in the introduction today about maybe you've got a big project going on at your club. Well, that's a different kind of stress. Maybe you feel a little bit of recovery, but then also make sure you've also built in personal time for recovery, like exercise. You're taking care of self-care, family, friends, so that you can find that joy outside of all that. So there's different mechanisms of recovery. I don't want it to think it's just, it's cut and dried, but there's different mechanisms of recovery to grow from the stress that's been created.
Absolutely, and like you said, there's a foundation of what recovery is, right?
That's right.
But then also recovery could mean different things to different people based on their personality and their needs, right? So finding that balance within themselves, I think each coach would have to try to find what's important to them and what charges them most.
And there's a great word picture around this. It's not a pleasant word picture, but it creates a great word picture, and that's grief counseling. Because this is where you really see this working beautifully. When someone is lost who's dear to someone, a grief counselor will say, it's okay to grieve, but don't get stuck there. Go to a movie, then go back and grieve. Be angry, then go back and grieve. Find joy, laugh, and then go back and grieve. Do you see what they're doing? They're teaching you to oscillate in and out of the grief. That's what we need to do in all of our work, in all of our lives. See, think about this. The heart rate does this. Brain waves, he can do this, everything. Muscle, EMG, does this. Nothing in life does this. When things happen like this, you're dead. So don't live your life like this. Live your life like this.
Yeah, we have to have that balance, and a lot of our viewers are probably directors, and they are in charge of staff. So setting that role model for their staff and creating that culture for them, where you work hard, but you also get a chance to recover and charge, because that's when the coaches will be able to perform at the highest, when they are balanced and when they're emotionally charged and ready to go.
That's absolutely correct.
Thank you for sharing that. That's I think it's such an important part. I think it's an aspect that's very much overlooked. And I would also like to tap in a little bit into the nutrition and sleep part of it, because I think that also goes into the recovery and also preparation, right? So you mentioned you have researched nutrition. You're very versed in that space. Tell us what proper nutrition does to the performance of an individual, and how does sleep come into that as well?
Okay, let's separate the two.
Okay.
Talk about nutrition first. Science has been showing that if you're doing something less than 90 minutes, water is adequate. Just replace water. But if it's over 90 minutes, which any tennis match could become, you need to start replacing the glucose stores, the glycogen stores. So that's where the sport drinks can come into play. And you probably should drink it before you get to the 90 minutes. So to have that routine in place around nutrition. The idea that when you finish, let's say you've played a really hard match and you're playing a weekend tournament, and you've got to play it in an hour and a half, you need to have been consuming something that has glucose in it during the match, but then you need to eat immediately, like maybe it's something that sits on your stomach. That's key. Pre-match meals is very key, but that's more about your routine. I was one athlete, very famous athlete that I was working with, and he had a match and he lost in the finals, and I was interviewing him to sort of debrief. Come to find out that he had leftover food that morning for breakfast, and I said, when was the last time you ever did that? Never. And I said, why would you break your routine to see? So there's the nutritional status of how we live our life, but then there's the pre-performance and post-performance status of how we care for ourselves. You know, and then a little bit of a fun part of this is that let's say that an individual says, well, I'm not going to eat a lot of red meat. I want to keep my red meat down, and that's fine. I'm not against that or for it necessarily. But then on the match day, they say, you know, I really feel like a burger today. Well, I'm the kind of guy that if you think that a burger is going to help you play better, how would you like that burger prepared? But this is where we can't get so
have that flexibility.
Fixed, yeah, on this. Now the sleep piece, that's really key, because that's the most important recovery mechanism we have. And so the idea about sleep, though, that I think is so key is have routines. And I've struggled with this. I'll throw my hands up. But to have a routine of when you're getting ready to go to sleep, start winding down. To be on our phone in bed and looking at, you know, playing games, that's the stimulation we talked about earlier. You're not going to rest well. You're not going to fall asleep easily. And some people say, well, yeah, but I can. Yeah, but you probably don't sleep well because the brain's been stimulated. So have a routine that works for you, that gets you into a state where you can rest. I'm going to be full bore disclosure. Get up in the middle of the night and go to the restroom. My mind just goes like crazy. I can't rest, but guess what I figured out? And I've done this now for the last 10 years. I have a book that these are fiction. This isn't science and nonfiction, something that challenges my brain. It's fiction that goes off into adventure and things like that. And I've trained my brain that as soon as I get the book, and I only get to 2 pages, because that's a signal to my brain it's time to sleep. So even though I'm reading, and I've got a nightlight, I have to charge it every morning because I leave it on. See, because I fall asleep. But you see, these are the kinds of routines we have to have in place. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of habit. If we have very bad habits to try to fall asleep, we won't sleep well. If we have bad habits in the middle of the night, we won't fall back asleep well. So we are creatures of habit. We have to build rituals, we do them over time, and they become habitual.
So a ritual would involve maybe going to bed at about the same time every night, right? Having the same climate in the room,
yes,
kind of the same.
100%. Studies have shown if you can go to sleep within 30 minutes of a regular time, you'll fall asleep easier. If the room climate, if the light, like I'm a person that needs darkness. I need dark.
Right.
And have a nightlight on in the other room, you know. Right. But some people don't like that. They want a light on. Okay, you understand the climate the environment that you need that'll help you rest. See, it's giving the brain it's time to rest. When the brain realizes that, the brain slows down, and then you can fall asleep or fall back asleep.
Absolutely.
But you're exactly right.
So again, you're highlighting the importance of basically preparing our bodies to perform, right? So getting them to perform every day without the proper nutrition, without the proper charging, which is the sleep, and also the emotional part, it's really challenging for individuals to continue to perform at a high level without these components that are helping them charge, right?
I mean, you're just pulling it off. I mean, we're not automatons. We're biological beings. That's the thing. So energy is not infinite. It is finite. We will run out of energy. So the glycogen, this is why people cramp in a tennis match. I mean, the muscle says, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't. You can't ask me. The brain will do the same thing. I'm gonna, you know, it's so funny. When I used to work with corporate executives all the time, I knew exactly the most productive week of their year. You know when it was? It was the week before they go on vacation. So they do like double the amount of work, but then guess what happens? Their second or third day on vacation, they get as sick as a dog. Why? Because their immune system just go. Their immune system shuts down and they get sick. They become compromised. And then and I can't tell you how many people, corporate executives, get sick on vacations because they've changed. That's why a vacation for somebody like that should be an active vacation where they're not working, but they're hiking, for example.
Yeah.
See, it's a different form of stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that leads us to the next concept that you and all Dr. Lear's work in the HPI, when you had that very strong program about energy management, right? Because I think a lot of times people focus on time management, but you've spoken over and over again how time management is important, but really it's about energy management.
Well, you know, this is so key, and I think, I really need to call out Jim's work on this, because what he did in the 80s, what he did with the 16-second cure, if your readers haven't seen that, they need to, because I think that was one of the most significant things that happened in sport in the last half of the 20th century. And that was recovering in between points. But it has to do with managing energy. And the idea that energy is finite, we have to recapture energy. So how do you do that? How do you do it physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? You have to do it in all four dimensions. So that, because biologically, you have to recapture energy. You can't, or you will run out. And then, this is when you get compromised. This is when people get in arguments, because they're fried. They're like, I've heard people say, I'm a fried nerve ending, and I don't know what to do. You need recovery.
So I think, to me, it's fascinating, because I think the more we navigate the journey from, coaching players comes so naturally. It's kind of like what we do every day. We've done it for so many years, and we teach them to do all these things. But then when we work in clubs or in administration and oversee other teams, we're helping coaches develop certain habits that are very similar to what the players need to do. So what you're describing is very much aligned with what the players need to do, but also what the coaches need to do to perform well as well.
And you're a role model. I mean, they see you. They
Absolutely.
See what you're doing.
Absolutely.
They see how you live your life. They see that you have a break, or not. They see
if you eat
this.
well.
They see it.
Exactly. If you eat well, if you hydrate, if you take those rests, right? So it goes hand in hand with, you got to walk the talk.
You do. You do.
You really have to do that.
You do.
Taking this a little bit further, we have a lot of coaches that have been in the industry for quite some time. Maybe they're navigating different steps of their career. What advice do you have for them in terms of putting this all together and trying to continue to sharpen this high performer philosophy for themselves and for their players?
Well, I think we always have to step back. Who are you? What do you want to do? What do you want from your life right now? I think it's always good. It's always healthy to recalibrate where you are. I mean, I'm constantly asking, am I the best I can be? Am I doing what I need to be doing? And I'm fortunately right now I am. I had a little bit of I had a sickness last year, and it kicked my butt. And okay, this is a signal, and now I'm feeling really good. And, working on the tan and everything else. I'm on the tennis court every day. I'm literally hitting tennis balls every day, and I just love it.
And they will just have to continue to reinvent themselves.
That's exactly my point. It's recalibrate who you are and who you want to be, not need. Your needs are important, but we've been talking about that. The needs, you have physical needs of nutrition and sleep. You have emotional needs of connection. You have mental needs of intellectual stimulation. You have spiritual needs of understanding what matters most. But you also have wants. And make sure that you're enjoying life. No matter where you are in life, make sure you're enjoying life.
That's a big one, to be able to do that, yeah. Again, brings back that balance, the importance of having balance in your life.
Right.
For those directors that oversee staff, creating that culture is very important. Allow your staff to design schedules that allow them to teach lessons, but also allow them to have some time off to be able to charge and become the best version of themselves they can be, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating. When you run a business, you obviously are in the business. You've got to have a successful business or you don't have a business. So there's a fine line in pushing, but also allowing. And pushing, see, the ideal is that they're self-motivated, that your employees want to push, and then you have to pull them back. See, that's the greatest dream in the world, not that you're constantly pushing. See, that if you create the model that they want to perform, then create the mechanisms by which they can recover. Oh my gosh, you've just created a dream job for somebody. But if you're constantly the boss who push, nobody's happy.
Yeah, eventually that's the recipe for burnout.
It is, 100%.
And a career in tennis, a career in racket sports is quite the grind.
So this is where, as an owner, as a boss, you have to listen to your employees. What are their needs? How can you meet their needs? And then when you're doing that, then you've got to pull them back. You see, this is a dream. See, I mean, one of the coolest things in the world is we're a boss to say, you know, you need to go to your child's game today. No, I gotta teach. No, you need to go to your child's game.
So just as coaches, we set up that coaching philosophy or culture within our coaching with our players. As leaders and as directors, we set up that same philosophy and culture with our staff.
100%. It's the culture you create from an employment standpoint and from a learner standpoint. And we're all learners. See, we should all be learners. We should all have a learning environment. Learning to be better ourselves, helping our students be better. And it's all about learning and getting better. How do you bring your best self every day and how you can be better and enjoy getting better?
That continuous improvement that has to be present in order for your job to continue to be fulfilling, right?
Joyful improvement, not driven improvement. See, I think that's where I was earlier in my career. I was so driven that I don't know if I had a whole lot of joy. I did have joy, but I loved my job so much.
Yeah.
But I wasn't finding a lot of joy outside of that.
Yeah.
So I was so driven, and I would encourage people. Like if people ask me, would you do things differently? I would have found more joy outside of my career. I would have really tried to do that. But I'm not taking anything back from my career. I've been blessed.
Yeah.
But I would have loved to have been able to find that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's always important to be able to, you know, for someone who has gone through that and has experienced it firsthand. Now you're able to share with us how would you do it differently. So that's for those of us that are coming right behind you, we definitely have a lot to learn in that space, and that's, I think, an absolute gem to take away.
Thank you, and that's why I'm writing my book too.
Well, I'm really looking forward to that, and
our
coaches will have access to it quite soon. It's coming up in just a couple months.
Later this year.
Well, we talked about many different things today. I think we started off with the idea of high performance and what it is to be a high performer, but not just with your players, but also with yourself as a coach, right? Because the way you conduct yourself every day is the way you're going to teach others how to do that on the court. And when we manage staff, is the way we conduct ourselves, is the way our staff is going to conduct ourselves. So I think the concepts are very common among these scenarios.
You know, again, I come back to what we just said. Create a learning environment. Learning to be better as a coach, learning to be better as a student. Create a learning environment. Learning to be better financially, learning to be better in all aspects. Learning to be a better friend, be a better partner, be a better parent, be better. Well, you've been obviously quite the example in that space, as you've navigated so many different parts of human performance. So we're extremely grateful to have had you here for the past hour to share all your knowledge with us. I wish we had more time because we could really dive into every single topic for much, much longer. Every episode, we try to wrap it up with 3 main takeaways. I know we talked about many different things, but what would you say are the 3 main takeaways for our coaches today? Adapt. What do you need to do to be your best self every day? And learning. Create a learning environment. Great. That curiosity will keep us growing. Childlike curiosity. There you go. Yep. Well, Jack, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for having me. We really, really appreciate it. We hope to have you back for some more episodes. I'd love that. And I'm sure the coaches will drop you a note when this episode is launched. So thanks again. Thank you very much. It's great to be with everybody. Thanks so much, everyone. That was it for today. We'll see you next time.